Hey there, it's Terence from Strategic Business Growth, of course, and Building Profit. So today I'm here with Scott Baker. If you're wanting to take your reviews and your reputation and your business to the next level, then Scott Baker is the man to be able to help you. So he's a bit of a leader in why people buy, and he's on a mission to help small businesses and entrepreneurs take both their reviews and reputation to unexpected levels. That's great. So Scott, welcome, and mate, thank you for being here today. And you've got a bit of a presentation to show us.
I have something that I'm very passionate about. Spent the last several years doing lots of research. My previous business for 15 years was in selling into the consumer market with large retail clients, with Woolies, Big W, and Kmart. And so tens of thousands of presentations and lots of results to get to this point, and why people buy and the psychology behind that, along with case studies of my own and case studies within authors that have put things together as well. Yeah, so I created Reviewology, and it's the brain science behind reviews. So I know enough about the Google component and other areas to assist with the reviews, but where I specialize in is the mindset behind it, as opposed to the technology, because there's a lot of technology out there. Hence the reason for the invisible evolution behind reviews that shape the way we buy. So I'll go through that. So I've got a book coming out in August and a podcast very soon as well, which is pretty exciting. What I'll run through today is there'll be a few things on here, and there'll be a couple of key points where I'll say if you forget anything, forget everything, forget all of it except for this one little part. But I'll run you through just a framework of how reviews work and the power of that invisible evolution that Google use, and the power within using their algorithms and human psychology to help. And think of it kind of a bit like a lighthouse. Instead of it just being a map, a pin map, like a pin on a map on Google with all the pins, you want to be that lighthouse that stands out amongst all that. So my favorite part is the Reviewology, which is the brain science, which I got more than 10,000 pages of notes, which is why I'm putting the book together to share that with all the stories, case studies to assist. So something that's been really powerful lately with one of my clients. By the end of this, you'll have a couple of key things that you'll be able to do, be able to implement straight away, or at least be mindful of, and you'll be also feeling a lot more at peace about other areas of reviews. But one thing that's at the end, there'll be a case study that I'll go over, which is quite profound in the value, and it's for a one-person operator who is a service-based client, and the impact it's had on his revenue and his business and his family is quite profound. So I'm going to not make you wait, but I will bring that up at the end. So I'll go through some basic stats, and I'll try. My favorite part is going to be going to the brain science part. So I'll run through some stats so that you've got a bit of an overview of that, and then I will get to the part that I feel will have the best impact and the most longevity for everybody watching. So 91% of people trust reviews as much as a personal recommendation, and I'll go through some of the reasons as to why that's the case. If any of these numbers bounce up at you and you go, "Oh, that's not quite right," if you just consider any previous purchase you've made, unconsciously we're making decisions with reviews in mind that we're not even aware of until it's brought to our attention. And consistently, clients are saying, "I hadn't realised how much reviews were out there until I started getting requested, or after working with myself." And I recommend giving other people reviews too, just as often as you can, just to get a feel for what it's like. So a lot of the times people are like, "Where do I start?" There's this whole, and what I want to say is at the end of this, I'm going to go through a lot of detail, and a lot of big picture stuff, and there's be lots of little detail that goes within it. The simplest way is to just start asking verbally. But at the end of this, I'll be giving everyone that will have access. You can use some free stuff, which will be worth implementing, and then you can request them for free. So stick around for that as well. So all I'll say is, it may look a little confusing. I'm going to share the power of reviews by getting these little bits and pieces in place. I'll show you a jigsaw puzzle that if we get all of them aligned, the difference it'll make to Google and being found will make a huge difference to your business. So in this example here, you've got location. So there's location based. So it's a knee surgeons near me. So the customer journey begins. People will type something into Google and then that'll bring it up. And I'm going to go through this in a bit of this is the process of, I'm looking for, if this is in this case, a knee surgeon. So 60% of Google searches are done on a mobile device. So keeping that in mind, people will also respond on a mobile device. The big pullback or pushback or whatever I get from people is that whole, I don't want to deal with negative reviews. Now, I'll give you probably the most powerful part from this presentation right now. If you can look at a negative review as the most powerful marketing tool that you're going to have, then that's what you need to consider it as, and look for a negative review as opposed to just seeking positive. Because a negative review, if you think of, I'll ask you the question now, Terence, if you had a business and one of them had 87 reviews and they had all 5-star and 2 negative, of those 87, which ones would you read?
Yeah, definitely the 2 negative.
So here's the best part, because the majority of people are going to read 4 or 5 positive, but they kind of think, well, they could be staged or whatever. The negative ones are the ones that really give the clarity. So here's the best part. About 80-something% of people read responses from businesses. So if you know someone, everyone's going to read your negative review, what would be a good way what would be great to put in that negative review response?
What would be great to put in the response? Well, the first thing would be great to respond to it.
Very good. I assume that, yes, absolutely. A lot of people say don't respond because they're fearful of what might happen. Let me say why it's critical that you respond. First of all, yes, do respond. And whatever the mistake is, even if there has been you've made a mistake, you've done something wrong, acknowledge that and say, look, we let you down. We did do this wrong, we did that wrong. We've made some changes, and this is now what happens when this happens. Anyone from this point on, we better do this, this, and this. Almost like a marketing campaign within the negative review, explaining we've made a mistake, we've done this, and what the type of client that you're looking for is someone who goes, oh, they made a mistake, oh, they admitted it, and oh, they're willing to publicly declare it, and they've changed the things. I want to deal with these guys. So it's building trust within the negativity. Now, depending on how severe the negative review is, often you can also read between the lines between a negative review and just a competitor carrying on, or just someone who's just having a real bad day. So it's really important to do that. The other thing, this is an example of a really good negative review. I've heard Snowbird is a tough mountain, but this is ridiculous. It felt like every trail was a steep chute or littered with tree wells. How is anyone supposed to ride in that? Not fun. Now, I like skiing. I look at that and go, I can't wait to get there, because that's describing everything that I want. So you can have that tribe that you're trying to attract and the ones you're trying to repel. You don't want to attract guys like this who don't like to ski like this. So the better they find out about that, the sooner the better. And then the ones who, like, it's just, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest reviews. And these guys have used it in their marketing, which I think is even really clever too. So here's the one thing right now I want you to imagine. The only way that any of the businesses that you deal with, Terence, or any of the ones I deal with, if someone doesn't know the name of that business, the only way how they're going to find them is they're going to type into this little thing called Google. They're going to type that word in. They want to type in plumber. They're going to type in near me. Or they're going to type in whatever it is, or builder near me. And then what's going to happen? Actually, I'll go to this slide and we'll go to the next bit. If this is the power of getting all these little tiny bits and pieces right. So you've got your personalization on your website, which is then behavioral, which is 10%. You got your social stuff, then you got your reviews, which is 13%. Then you got links, makes up 17%. And then there's your reputation. So your Google My Business page, that makes up 18%, nearly 19%. And then your citations. Now, a lot of this is language is fairly new to a lot of people. But what I'm letting you see here is that it's not just SEO. It's not just reviews. It's a combination of all these things. And I'm going to take you through the power of, if you get each one of these right, Google go, oh, these guys are following our language. They're doing what we say, and they're fulfilling the obligation to make it easier to work with them. And people keep coming back to their site, so we're going to reward them. So these are some of the elements. It's not just about reviews. It's a much bigger, broader picture. And if anyone's sitting there going, okay, that seems like a lot to take on board, what I'm going to show you is all the things that make a difference. And at the end of it, if you stick around, there's free software that'll let you connect to all of these things to make best use of it. So you can see if there are any issues within your business, which is really powerful. And so if it is of interest, you don't have to learn about it. You just have to know about it. And once you know about it, then it makes it easier to solve some of the challenges that what I'm going to show you is transparency on a scale that you might not have seen before with your business. And a small business operator that I always got scared of the smoke and mirrors of the SEO and the AdWords, and they do a great job, but I don't know what they're doing. I still don't know what they're doing, and I'm in this space. So what this does is it gives the transparency for a small business owner to go, hey, I don't know what you're doing here. Can you tell me what this means, rather than being dictated to by those particular elements? Hopefully I'm still popular with them, but if not, at least small business will like it. So if we go to looking at this area here about, if you have a look at here, we've got Modern Italian Cafe, it's got 4 reviews, then the one below it's got 855 and the one below it's got 554. The only thing in this example of a cafe is the differentiating factor is the reviews. Like, we can't change the text, we can't change the font size, we can't change anything. All we can adapt or make a change to is the name. We can't even change the name of our business because we have to keep it the same. And so the only thing that the gateway between us and the world is through Google, but we have to get these reviews. So that line in the middle with the stars and the average, that is the differentiating factor between whether people can find you or not. Now, you don't even have to have a website. A lot of these cafes and that don't even have a website, but they have a Google My Business page. So do all businesses need websites? No, but does it help if you're in a service-based industry? Yes, it can. But if someone's in a hurry to get a plumber and you're in that map section, they're going to click the call button. They're not even going to go to your website if the pipes burst. They just want to get and they'll go based on their preference of that. So the power of reviews is exponential in that. I have a client on the Central Coast, and there's a community of people that are really challenging for him to deal with because they want a really good discount every time they deal with him. They're now ringing him up. They have limited English, and they're just saying, they're pointing to reviews, and he's like, I'll do a good deal. And they're like, no, reviews. So then it's translating in that they don't want a discount. They just want to work with him because you got over 200 reviews and his competitors are at about 40. And so if we went to a foreign country now and we wanted to stay in somewhere, if we didn't understand any of the reviews, we would look at the numbers and the stars, and that would be our definitive factor between whether we stay in one place over the other. Well, that's what I would choose. And I'm pretty sure that the majority of people would do the same as a safety factor anyway. And so here's the part, going into slight little bit of detail. You need to optimize your Google My Business listing. So it's got to have, if it has your address, your hours, your phone number, category, attributes, and photos. The difference between my clients who put photos on the Google My Business account each month and the ones who don't is between 5,000 and 10,000 extra views they get on their page, because Google go, hey, you're following our little secret. Well, it's not a little secret, but if you put your photos up on your page, we'll bring people to the site. If people posted on Facebook at the same time as they posted on Google My Business at the one time, clicked one button, did it on both, you'll be able to see the numbers. I'll show as you go through the climb that takes place within that. What's this got to do with reviews? Well, a lot, because the more that you can put all of this together in one little functionality and make it as simple as possible for a very busy business owner and a one dashboard, the less effort they need to do in order, like they'll save money on SEO. They'll also climb up the rankings. Google will reward them for being good at what they're doing. So here's the other part that a lot of people aren't aware of. The words that clients use in their reviews become part of your SEO. So if you can get them to refer to the language, like in this case, they've put best coffee shop in the area. So they've highlighted, they've written, but I've highlighted the best coffee. When someone's typing coffee in my area, it's got coffee shops near me, that's what the words that are used within the review by the client make a huge difference in terms of it's called user-generated content. So keeping that top of mind, that's reviews are second most important thing when it comes to being found on Google at the moment, based on the latest updates. So it's got SEO's number one, and then reviews are number two. Reviews, if they were taking into consideration the value of its SEO, I'm sure they would be there'd be some good argument as to even how more valuable they are. So one of the challenges I've found with clients is when we put their stuff into my database or the dashboard, and it's all free, so it's not a sales pitch here as much as a transparency, like update for you to have a look at how you sit. It'll show a really successful business has 200 Google reviews and 180 Facebook reviews, and it's like, uh-oh, they've spelt them wrong. Oh, Scott, well, it's no big deal. Well, if you imagine spelling an email wrong, does it still get to the end address? It doesn't. You spell one of these addresses wrong, Google don't recognize them as a joint business in their algorithm of what's called aggregator. So they won't aggregate the score together. Now, if there's some Google wizards out there saying I'm using the wrong words, well, all I'm saying is it won't add up the value between Facebook and Google as well as it would as if Google can see that they're exactly the same spelling. They want to also know if the reviews are positive, and there's a few other bits and pieces which I'll go into. I don't want to. There's a few other elements within all of the business. So you've got retail location, service area, store with a store, store within a store. They've got kiosks, containers, and professional. I say all that because none of them are the same, and each one is a specialty within itself. So you've got SEO, Google AdWords, and then you've got Google My Business, it's a specialty, and then Google My Maps, which is almost another specialty, and then you've got this little framework, and each one has a different set of events. So it's not the complexity of it all as much as just being aware that these sections exist. So 94% of consumers say an online review has convinced them to avoid a business. So that could be that no one's responding to the reviews. It could be that the reviews are consistently have that tone of they were good, but there's just it's getting authentic reviews that are talking about the experience and talking about how they've felt will make a big difference in the way that people are interacting with them. And I have a copywriter who's an incredibly successful copywriter, does stuff for Tony Robbins and all that type of stuff. And I watched a presentation with him last week and we worked together a bit, and he was he'll go through all the reviews on a particular business and he'll break it all down. And I'll show you the software that he uses with mine. And he pulls out all the keywords and he looks at the words that they're saying they don't like about the product and the products they are, and then he uses it all in marketing. And when you hear him do it in a presentation, it is just amazing the value he pulls out of the reviews. So you can use it for your marketing campaigns as well. So you want to request reviews, respond to them, and understand the feedbacks, like I was just saying, to make some changes. And I'm kind of going through this a bit as slow as I can because I want to get to the part that I want to share, but I think having an understanding of the power behind it, what I'm about to go and show you now is stuff that the majority of small businesses wouldn't even know exists. And I say that with complete respect, in that this is where the juicy parts are that you can make a huge difference on your business, because I would say if your competitors are doing it, you're losing out. If you're doing it, your competitors will be certainly paying the price. So you want to have a tool, this is in summary, you want to have a tool that gives you an overview of where you're sitting in all of those things. So where your competition is, what your accuracy is online, how many recent mentions, your summaries, and how things are rated. And just it could be for someone who's a leader of an organization, or it could be a small business owner, again, just wanting to have a snapshot. Okay. But then it's like, okay, Scott, well, where's the snapshot? But what do I do if it's wrong? Glad you asked. So at the top here, this is a bit of the software that it will show you the words that are being used and those bits and pieces. It's really critical too that you have Facebook reviews, not just Google. Google are the dominant ones, the dominant third-party reviews. Facebook are the second. It's kind of like being popular amongst two groups of people, not just one. Google will reward you far more than just being good on Google, because they want you to be liked by as many review sites as possible. And the more you can be on, the bigger the aggregated score is, which again, I'll show you through how to do that. So this is going through those positive and negatives. And if you're wanting to use that as as research for your marketing, you can. displaying your reviews so they can automatically go up on your review sites, having widgets that can do that they're important. Who's mentioning you? So either who's mentioning you, your business name online, because remember, I know it's about reviews, but your reputation is the most valuable asset you have. If someone's mentioning you and you don't know about it, oh my, imagine finding out a month later that someone had just stripped you. And it all started from hearsay, but it ran with this coincidental other story that matched with what, oh yeah, because he's on holidays, it must mean blah, 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 blah. And then next minute, people have destroyed you online. Or there's that really bad crater online that pops up when people are searching your name. So having the ability to see who's mentioning you is from the reputation, but again, connected with all those things. So this is the part that blows people's minds. And I'm dealing with a big national brand at the moment, and I ran a report for them, and they sat there in disbelief at more than 70 sites had an error on every single Google My Listings page. And then on top of that, every single one of their listing scores that was related to Bing Maps and Yahoo Local and all the other Apple Maps, they were all incorrect as well. Let me just go back to that page. So what that means is you come up, when someone types you into Google, you come up on Google, but you want to also be available on Apple Maps. A lot of people aren't, and it's like, how many people here have an Apple phone and use Apple Maps? A couple of people. So there's a lot of people not taking advantage of that. And there's also a lot of people not taking advantage of the industry related sites that are out there so there might be an industry for builders and they're not on that industry site spelt the right way, or they might not be getting reviews from that particular site. That might be, say, the product review, which is really big for builders. They're getting reviews there, but not on Google. Google make a difference between SEO, and product review website makes a difference between a purchase decision. So they've got to get to you first before they can decide if you're the right builder. And if they can't get to you, product review is no good until they found you. I'm sure you're nodding, Terence, so I know what you mean there. I mean, I think you know. So these are some of the other listing sites or citations that you could be on. If you're in the hospitality space, Airbnb would be important, but it picks the ones that are powerful for that industry. And the more of them that you can be on, the better. Now, trying to find all these is a time-consuming task. So my software goes out, finds all the ones that you're on, finds the ones where they're spelt wrong, which is 90% of the time, and then it automatically updates them for you. I will declare here that this part, that there is a paid component of it. It's not a lot. I think it's less than $100 for the year from memory. So it's not a great deal of money, but it certainly gives you one dashboard to make changes across all of those different sites. But you can just do the basic ones for free, and then it'll show you all the ones that are wrong or that have been, and you could go on there and manually do it, but you have to go into each account and set it up and do that. This way it lets it do it for you automatically. So this is another way you can keep an eye on the competitors, see what they're doing, how are their Facebook posts, where are they getting their interactions. It's almost like a spy in the sky type thing, especially if you've got a really successful competitor. There's no point reinventing the wheel. They might have a big marketing campaign or a big firm. Just make some modifications to suit yours, and then you can be taking advantage of the data that they've been running. And then connecting your social media also in one dashboard. Mine on the free platform, what it lets you do is you can hook up your Facebook and your Google My Business, and in one button, click it and post it to both sites. And that software on its own it's usually about $50 a month on most sites, but it's on my basic one, it's free. So if you want that, jump on at the end and you'll be able to get that as well. So I'll go through. This is a bit of the process of the sequence of getting the reviews. So you send out a bulk. You can send out a bulk CSV file. There's two options working with me. You can either do it yourself, or you can have work with me. And what this does is to think of the technicality of it. You go, I've got all these clients. How am I going to do it? You put in a CSV file. You push it into the system, and then it will send it out. It will send out a review request via email or text. They will then respond onto either your first. It'll be be either on your site or Google or both, preferably both. I won't go into the technicalities of that. And then this is an example before of what I was saying about this. This slide here shows you if you were going to go to the dentist, which one would you pick? Like, I don't mind if the one Sunnyside's a bit more expensive than King Street, because they got the same amount of reviews, but one is 4.8, so I'd feel a lot safer. Now, that could be the definitive. That's the only factor on any of Google stuff. As I said, you can't change the font. You can't change the name of the ad that you put there. All you have, you're locked in place. Google own us, because the only way they can get to your website, unless they know the domain, is via this little window here. So getting those reviews right, I know it's dawning on you right now, whoever's watching, how much more powerful that is. So this is just keeping insights as to how many emails are sent, your open rate, just simple marketing stuff. If you haven't seen those things before, then this will be quite powerful. Again, setting up the widget on site. This is the part here that brings it all together. So think of it like I was saying earlier, you're a map and you want to stand out on that map to bring people in to use your service. Now, back in the day, there was the lighthouse, because it was like safe harbor, that would lead you to safety. It must have been that invested enough time and effort to build a lighthouse, and there was danger aboard. So it was like, okay, here's a lighthouse, here's a sign of safety. We're going to get that and head into the harbor. You want that type of feeling for people going, okay, I don't know much about this particular industry, but these guys here stand out above all the others because they've got more reviews. So therefore, in the mind goes, well, if they got more reviews, they must be better. That doesn't mean the case. It just, there's the perception there. Usually it does, but if you've got a really good system and poor service, you're going to have more reviews than if you've got an amazing service and no system. So in this case here, you want to have the lighthouse, and so that draws the client in. So once the clients come in, here's the part where I mentioned earlier about having an army. Imagine having a client that works with you, and then they pay you to protect your reputation, because they're going to then provide a review for you during the transaction, during or after, and they're going to build up that fortification for your reputation. So not only is the review going to draw people in, that's one aspect, they're going to pay you as a client to then build the monument to protect you. So go through the process. You frame the request, and I'll go through some examples I'll use if I don't, remind me, Terence, but you frame it, and then you get the review, and then you repeat the cycle again. But there's something much more valuable to all of this, which is the part that I'll go to now. Back in I think I've said this to you before, Terence, back in the 15th century, they built the forts in a star shape. Now, some of you are sitting there going, well, where's he going with this? Like, we're talking about reviews, we're talking about 2021. I'll tell you what I'm talking about with this. Think of it this way. You're building, the main thing about this is you're going to get a negative review. No matter how good you are, you're going to get one. No matter how amazing your fort is in the 15th century, someone's going to try and take you on. So you need to have this thing built. So what they found out was that these smaller towns and places could build a star-shaped fort. And they realized that by building a star-shaped fort, it didn't allow the cannonball, when it hit it, to use all the force to hit it at one angle. It would be on an angle and it would deflect. So you think about it this way: you build the fortification to your reputation. When you do get that negative review, it's like, look at the basis and the monument we've already built. It's like 87 reviews high, and we've got a negative review. We can use that for marketing now. We're not sitting on 5, which makes it not look perfect. And there's two parts to this. One is knowing the negative review is coming, but build the fortification before you need it. 2, your reputation is more valuable than anything. And to have an army of people who have paid to build that for you, that's pretty powerful. So the cannonball is the negative review, it deflects off. But here's the part that is the best. Once people promote you publicly, they then have a duty that I have now put my name to this business. So because if anyone mentions that business, I declare my allegiance to that business, and that business will then have my backing. So they want to justify their decision to back you publicly that you're the right choice. So they're going to then, if they hear a comment when someone says, oh, do you know a really good business coach, or do you know a really good events coordinator or runner, or do you know, they're already going to say, yep, I do, because I've already, it's not like I've just used them. I've declared my allegiance to them. And some amazing research came out of North Korea when they had some prisoners of war that are American prisoners of war, and the North Koreans were trying to get them to change their view on the world, on the West, and say that what they were doing was capitalistic and all that stuff. And the soldiers were like, no. And they said, okay, we don't want you to say anything. We just want you to write down one sentence about what could be slightly different. And they started off with one sentence, and then by the end of it, when they came out of, and they'd been writing all these letters, their mind had gone to, no, we do support this. And it wasn't their belief as much as, at that point, it wasn't a belief, but it became a belief, and it became a top of mind thing. So having someone publicly declare their allegiance to you is, you've got an army of people paying you to build a monument to you, and then they're going to go out there and declare that to you. Why is that important? Well, there's a lot of reasons. One is you have a sales team out there on your behalf. So each person who leaves a review is more likely to talk to other people and refer you than those who don't. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to go through a case study in just a second that we'll share that. So does that all make sense, Terence?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then here's a case study that, and each week he keeps adding bits and pieces to it. So he was spending about $2,300 a month on ads. He was fairly new. He didn't really know what else to do because his business is lock tricks. So it's a new customer all the time. It's not like one client stays with you for 5 years like with you, Terence, or something. It's like, and you might get one a month or two a month because it's a different transaction. This is 10 a day. So he's like churning through them. So he's trying to keep that up and running. And I said to him, how many reviews, after he's at 140 Facebook reviews now, and 140 Google, I think, and 100 and something Facebook, around that mark. I said, how many people ring you each week for reviews? And he goes, oh, about 3 people a week ring me and saying that they ring me because of my reviews. And he goes, but they'll say it this way. They'll go, I'm ringing because your reviews are good and I want to use you, which what they're really saying is, I will give you a bad review if you're bad. I'm putting you on notice. But he also knows he's going to get a good review if he does a good job because they've told him. And he says, it's the best. We both know we're on watch. And he says, and I get a review. And then he said, others will just ring up and said, hey, your good reviews are good. You couldn't have 120 mates that like you that much or whatever. But the one that I said, but that's not that really good. Like, it's about 40 grand turnover for the year if you're getting 2 or 3 of those a week or whatever it was, 3 a week. And he says, yeah, but I've forgotten to tell you the other part. I go, what? And he goes, I'll get, if a client rings up and says, hey, I'm ringing because your reviews are good, and then I know that they're what would be like an influencer, someone who loves to share the love. Those people who can't help but brag about, oh, this guy cut my lawn so well, I thought he was using scissors, or whatever they describe. Once these people come along and they seek these reviews, they find them, they then become the spruiker for your business. And he goes, I know I will get between 5 and 10 referrals from them over the next 2 months, and they will make it clear that the person will say, hey, tell Jason, Terence sent you. Just tell him, yeah? Because they want to be recognized as well. Like, they're part of that recognized. They want to be recognized. They want to recognize it's part of their identity. And so here's the other thing. They hang around like-minded people who also, they don't hassle him on price. They don't, these are high quality clients that are not competitive on price. They're quality based and they're referred to. So there's no competition. So he says 30% of his business now comes from these key influencers, and they make it. And the other day there was someone, he said, just to give an example, the next 6 jobs came from 2 people. And I know the people that I'm doing the jobs for have already got me other jobs lined up. So the effect that comes off the back of a good quality lead that comes from a quality review platform that is a permanent reminder on your site. Here's the other thing. in the not too distant future, when you're selling your business, your reviews will be part of the asset class. Like it can't not be, because of the value it brings to SEO. So this national client that I'm working with at the moment, when I mentioned that to them, they go, well, when clients sell their businesses, they want as much as they possibly can to add into the asset class. And I said, well, they need the reviews. If they're sitting at 30 reviews, it's not that big a deal, but you're sitting at 300 reviews, like and they've got a business structure that one new client will generate about $1,300 to $2,000 a year. And they're an ongoing client. And it's not like a review brings in one new client. It brings in brings in one client, but it's a client that might be with them for 3 or 4 years spending that amount of money. A locksmith client is very different. It might be one bragging to their mates, but you might have a home product that people need monthly, like this national brand. And once they bring one in, and then they've got a mate who has the same product. Yeah, it's really good. It's good quality. It just like there's huge value. So I'll show you the differences. And this has changed. It's even improved since this, but so they're spending 2,300. It's down to, it's even less than 800 a month now. So his turnover hadn't changed. It's now gone up since I only spoke to him yesterday. And then 5.5 days a week, that hasn't changed. He was 7 and he was doing all hours of the day and night, now 9 to 5. And the jobs were price sensitive and harder to get. Now he's not even competing on price because they're not price sensitive as much as they are quality sensitive. Now,
not defensive, maybe.
So
maybe they're not as defensive as well because
yeah. And what was amazing yesterday was one of the BNI clients had said that a client just rang up and said, "Look, I want to book you in for 6 months." Didn't have to, like. I love sales, but imagine a client ringing up and saying, "Look, yeah, book me in for 12 months. Where's your bank details?" Now, when she told me, I was just like. And she goes, "I just thank you so much." And I was like, "Yeah, no worries." And I have this, when I speak to a client, I've got a stack of clients on the Central Coast, and it started off as a bit of a joke. And I think, Paula, you were on the call when I probably started this, but I said, yeah, just invoice me. That's what I would say. And so I said to this guy, "Hey, when you love what I do, I just want you to tell your mates just to ring me and say, invoice me." He's had 3 people in the last 2 months ring and say, "Just invoice me. That's what Joel said to do, Scott." And I go, "Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll send you the invoice." And so then I sent the invoice and I gave them a choice now rather than one price. And each of them have taken the most expensive option and they've never seen a presentation. So that's not even like it's that non-sales part doesn't even really make much sense, but I love it. I don't even know why I'm talking about that part as much as I was thinking of you. I was thinking of the language that we can use and the way that this client yesterday said, "Hey, Scott, they rang up and that was the first time I never had to sell, but I had the biggest sale."
I think I mean, maybe I can add to that because, if we talk about the strength of what we would term as being cold traffic or cold lead or something like that, compared to the strength of a warm or referred lead, and they have totally different there's a totally different approach, I guess, from either one. And if someone comes to you cold, generally, I guess you might expect that their guard's up. I know if I go somewhere cold, I've never met them before, I don't know much about them, your guard's up and you're almost defensive before you get there. And I think what we're talking about here is, I don't think we need to prove the fact that, referrals and warm leads, someone who's been referred to you there's a lot less sales involved because they're already convinced in a large way because they've been referred by someone they trust, which gives them a whole lot of more confidence. And I think that's what we're talking about here. We're getting something that resembles more of a referral than a cold lead. And so we've got that inferred level of trust already. So the guard's not up, so that it changes the transaction a little bit more. Well, changes the transaction completely. Yeah. That's what I'm kind of hearing from you.
Yeah, that's a really brilliant. Exactly. That's the part. Like I know this happens, but I love it when a client rings and tells me, hey, exactly what you said would happen has happened. Now, in fairness, and I'm sure she will possibly listen to this, but in fairness, we would say that it hasn't been the greatest success in terms of how it's all unfolded, but it's not a short term. It's not just let's do it and hope for the best. It's like, let's do it and let's get it right. And there's been little bits and pieces, and that's what happens. But then all of a sudden, like something like that, I know her interest in it has skyrocketed, because it's like, whoa. Okay. I've just paid for Scott's services for the next couple of years from one client, and we haven't even got this stuff sorted yet. Imagine what's going to happen when I love you, you know, I'm talking about when they listen, but when they do it just a little bit, like we're only just doing a snippet at the moment. But it's just, it's exciting when you see it come into place. And some people get it instantly. Some people, it just takes a little bit longer. But again, the beauty of it is that at the end of the day, if you've got, as the reviews are growing and it's building, it's putting, what I'm finding is sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get the foundations right. And then once we find out, it's a little bit like a sale. Like once you find out, oh, okay, what's the script to get that good sale? That it's a bit like that, because each industry fundamentally different on a scale that is blowing my excited mind about how to do it. And there's some industries that I love working with, and others that I just go, whoa, this is like, and you'll have people from the same industry going, no, and actually, no, builders never do reviews. And then other one, the client gets 90% of the reviews from builders. And it's like, well, I don't think builders are different. I think it's the approach we're using is actually the approach we're using. I won't give the business name away, but the approach we're using is we ask for the review via text message before the transaction.
Yeah, makes sense.
So nothing happens, this is what I think might be in the power in it, because he gets not a 70% open rate, he gets a 70% response rate, as in they do a review.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone opening an email is a big thing, let alone to open it and then respond and then put it on Google. So he sends the review request as they book in the work with him. And I'm like, why? And he goes, it's just easier. And I'm like, I don't agree with it. And he goes, well, I said, but I trust your intuition. So he does it. But what's happening is it's framing them. So they're going, oh, okay, he wants me to do a review and I haven't even got anything. How cheeky. But guess what? When the product arrives, they go, they did that quite nice. I like the way because he's really good at that. And then when they pick it up, when they've done what they've done, they're really good at that. So they go, I'm going to leave you a really good review because you told me, because that's when the second one comes in. So the first one goes, you leave a review? Nah, they don't do anything. They don't respond until the second or third. So that industry, that's what it works well. Now that we've figured that out, he's begging me not to go to competitors within his realm, and I'm definitely not going to, but I will be going to other people outside of his state to start with and go, look at this, why don't you give it a try? I it won't be at the moment, but it would be worth considering as another case study.
So Scott, I'm not sure how much you've got left to go. I've got a couple of questions.
No, I've just been going. Yeah, no, I'll go with the questions. That'd be great.
Cool. All right. So are you pretty much done with the presentation otherwise?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Sweet. So a couple of questions. First one is, are there any situations where less reviews is better? Like, is there ever a situation where reviews are not the right thing for your business potentially, or less reviews is better?
That's a really good question. Can you give me, like, is it an industry that you're thinking, or is it a style, is it a type of business?
I'm just wondering if there are any actual situations. I mean, it's, you know, we talk about the strength of reviews, and
yep.
I'm inclined to agree, but I'm just wondering whether there are some people out there who you know, who shouldn't be worrying so much about reviews. Are there certain types of, you know, certain types of industries, just say it's extremely high trust, and maybe, for instance, I don't know, lawyers. Let's say lawyers, right?
Yep.
It's an interesting industry where you kind of think that everything maybe should be private, and maybe you'd expect that you go to a lawyer's website and they won't have reviews, for instance, right? And putting reviews there might make it look like that it's staged or something like that. So I'm just, and hey, that's just one example. Like, you
No,
put
I
me
like-
back on the spot, but that's just one example that I can think
Yeah.
of. And it's like, well, are there many other, like, someone watching this? It's like, you know, is that the way forward for them or not? Basically,
It's a really good question, and I like the way you've put it that way. My natural inclination is when someone says, you should have reviews, I'm like, well, convince me, or should you not? Well, convince me. So I'm always like, if you think one way, tell me why you think that, or if you don't think that, like, what is it that has you differentiating your view on it? My initial reaction is that the biggest issue with lawyers, anyone watching, you do a great job. I could never do it. I'm not that type of, like, I'm so glad that there's guys out there that do that. I think there's that element of, there's a perception of what a lawyer is based on, like, car salesmen and real estate agents. So having something that might not necessarily be about, so there's two elements to this. One is, do you want it to sound like it's legitimate, but also does the person want to remain confidential? Because there's two parts to that, which you can have both. And Paul has been very good at figuring out that you can just do your first name and initial, as opposed to, or helping one of my clients actually, because Paul is amazing at helping. Paul, you're amazing, thank you. So you can have that. You can hide your identity by just first name and initial. So that would then give it a bit more credibility, but then less credibility, because is it really that person and that type of stuff? But I think the initial answer is, I would say the reviews would help unless I can think of a reason why. One example would be, I think it would be scary, right, to be a company that does identity, like they say they're going to protect you from hackers and all that type of stuff. Because what would happen then is you're then saying to every hacker out there, hey, come on, see if you can take on my technology. And there's too many forums out there with bored people going, hey, let's see how we can hack this dude's system. So I think having the clients who have said they've thanked them would then get possibly hacked, because they've said that this company is so good at protecting their thing. So
yeah. So where privacy might be a key thing or something like that, maybe it's not a good idea to go and get good review. Just a really interesting point, because we generally operate on the assumption that reviews are good, and I think that assumption again is generally correct. Yes. But it may not be correct for everyone, and so I just wanted to kind of clarify that.
And I think, and it's a really good thing, because I'm helping a few clients with reputation management. There's a big wine client at the moment that's dealing with how their perception is in the market, and they have a product. I've got to be careful. I'm just trying to think of how I can describe it. They've got a product that, let's just say, isn't the industry isn't a fan of it, but it's having this massive positive impact on so many levels. But because there's such tradition within the industry, they don't want to accept it. So it's another good example. People don't actually want to be associated with the product because it's within the industry. It's considered like, well, you shouldn't use that methodology because we've been using a typewriter all the time. We should still typewrite instead of using a text message. They're still thinking a typewriter is the best option. And they don't want to be seen to be sending a text message, because then they're not following the traditions of 600 years or thousands of years of winemaking. So there's this real element for their reputation to be, it's like, well, let's hide your reputation that you're actually using the product, because you don't want to be seen within your industry to be like, it's a really clever question. So I'm glad you asked, but it is very dependent.
Yeah. Always. All right. Three biggest elements to a great review
is using words that if it's a service-based business and it's a plumber and they're based in a particular area and they've done your hot water service, it's like, great plumber in Mornington, my hot water service was fixed in no time. Like, that's the type of thing. I know it doesn't even have to sound like, there's two elements to this. The biggest element is Google. Convincing Google that what you're doing is right. They're the biggest sales pitch. The client will just fall into line. They can't, they're not going to care how the reviews are written as much as they're going to care that you got a lot of them. And I'm using this as a very broad stroke, is that you got 4 businesses. One's got 100 reviews all the way down to 10. and the reviews are pretty staggered, but you've got a lot of them, and you're following Google's rules, you're going to blitz. But if you've got 15 like really long-winded reviews and they're amazing, Google aren't going to care if there's no keywords in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But so first one is convince Google with the review content.
Yeah, just get reviews consistently, because Google want to see them every 2 months. If they're seeing them every 2 months, they see consistency. There's a book I've read called Influence, and there's the 6 key elements to it about how everything is done. And consistency for reviews is critical. So they want to see consistency, as do we all do. It's part of our human nature. We want to see that consistency. So seeing them consistent on a consistent basis, just flowing in, being responded to, actioned, it gives this sense of.
So is that the second one, consistency, we could say? So yeah. I would say the first one is content. And it's like, well, the content needs to be the right content that Google wants to see, but also people looking at it would want to see, right?
Yeah.
And so you're convincing Google, but plus you're convincing people who want to be able to see those reviews. The second one is consistency.
Yeah. And if you want to put a cherry on top on the first one, is get a client to take a photo with their camera, and when they do the review, that's like putting it on steroids.
Ooh, okay. Add photo for steroids. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the third one would be responding to reviews.
Yeah.
So that response, like people don't, oh, well, I've got a review. Yeah, but the response is what Google are looking for within their algorithm too. They've got a lot of little gates that if they're ticked, it's just like, it doesn't make that sound, I don't think.
Not that I've heard.
In my head, it goes.
All right. So respond to reviews. Yeah, perfect. That actually makes loads of sense. All right. So last question for me, because I think you've covered a lot, right? And there was not a lot in there that I really needed to question. Like it all kind of made sense. And but one thing you didn't say, what's the best way and the best time to ask for a review?
It's because I was waiting for you to ask that question. It's a really, really good question. And it comes back to how long's a piece of string, and also should you always just get reviews? Within service-based industries, the best way is text message.
Yeah.
99.9% open rate, and they respond really quickly. And they're pretty much, they're like it's like a warehouse, like I don't know, it's like buying and discount type thing.
Yeah.
Other industries, I'm working with a finance company at the moment, and they've assured me that people would do reviews for them, and that this would happen and that would happen, all that type of stuff. And I went, I know you think that's the case, but if we don't pre-frame this, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
We went back and forth. I said, okay, I'm putting it in writing here. I disagree. And then a month or so later, they're like, hey, it hasn't worked. And I'm like, remember? And so now we've changed it with some pre-framing, and we're doing it not via text. They wouldn't respond to the text. It was weird.
Mm-hmm.
They were opening the emails, but they were opening the text, but not clicking through. But again, these were clients that had been with them for say 5+ years. They had a high net worth. They were in their late 50s. They were probably distrusting of maybe mobile devices. I don't know. But again, these were very high net worth individuals. So maybe they just felt exposed on their phones. I'm making that up because I'm about to actually go and interview them to find out why they didn't do it. Because it's he is so flabbergasted that we sent out so many and none of them responded. None.
Yeah.
Never ever seen it. And
you
these are
said
clients.
Something a second ago about like pre-framing, and so that's an interesting point because I'm, my question was, what's the best way and the best time? However, one thing that I talk about a lot with my clients is pre-framing what's happening. So before I ask for a review, and the way that I work with them is that before they ask for a review or any sort of social proof, they'll pre-frame throughout the process, even throughout the sales process, potentially. Like if you're talking about a builder or a tradie, they'll pre-frame all that so that it's not a surprise. And I
Yes.
guess if someone's been working, if it's a high trust thing, high net worth individuals have been working with someone for 5 years, it could be that there was no pre-frame there, and all of a sudden it's a big surprise. And
Yes.
so that's the first
Exactly.
thing that kind of comes to mind for me.
Exactly. And I had said I will put everything I have on the fact that it's worth a phone call for just, and it's worth doing this slower than you want to do it to get, because here's the interesting part, and we had, it wasn't a nice conversation we had. Like, we were a bit argy-bargy, and I just said, look, here's the thing, we've still pre-framed them. We've pre-framed them. It just hasn't been the frame that it would have been better to tell them when they came round the other night that we had a party coming up, rather than sending them an invite and hoping that their neighbour across the road didn't find out about it. It was kind of like this secret squirrel type stuff, which, whereas if you just, I said earlier, I'd tell you about a pre-framing that works incredibly well for service-based industries. So, perfect segue. My locksmith, I'll use him because he follows my instructions verbatim, and then he just stops. But when he does follow them, they make such a change. So he's ringing me, and he's really frustrated because he's in a highly competitive locksmith industry. The competitor's been there 40 years. He was only like 8 months old at the time. Was his old boss, which didn't help probably. I think anyway, forget about any of that part. But there was certainly some competitors there. They'd ring up and say, hey, when can you come round? He'd say, I can come round at 4 o'clock. They go, yes or no. And then when they did say that, they would then never be there when he'd turn up. And he'd be really angry because they'd be shopping around trying to get the best price. So I said, you need to frame it differently. So it went like this. What time do you want me to come around? Yeah, can you come around at 4 o'clock? Yeah, and he says, look, I can't, but I tell you what, if I move things around and I do get around there at 4 o'clock, can you promise me that you'll be there? And they'll go, yeah. And so now they've made a verbal agreement with him. And so once he's got that verbal agreement, the cancellation rate almost was nil. So that saved him a lot of time and made him a lot of money because he wasn't wasting driving to different locations. So that was a benefit outside of the review part. And he said, the reason I want you to make sure you're there is my amazing clients always leave amazing reviews. Makes sense, doesn't it? Actually, I've got it. But so he's pre-framing that. But what he'll say is, the reason I want you there at 4 o'clock is I'm going to be there on time. I'm going to do a great job. And my great clients always leave great reviews. Makes sense, does it not? So it's more, they add that bit in. And then they go, yeah, it makes sense. So then when he turns up, they'll be sometimes saying, hey, do I do the review now or do I do the review at the end? But it's when I was I used to install antennas and I was really bad at it, but I was good at the drinking the coffee with the client and chatting with them, as Paula would know. And and so what would happen is I went in one day and they said to me, are you busy? And I said, oh yeah, the last client gave me 3 leads, which they had. And I went out to the car, came back, and there was 3 leads on the table that they'd called their friends. I was like, oh, this is good. So then I'd say that every time I went, which was true because that's what kept happening. And then I was at another house and it was a really hot day and a lady had a jug of cordial and made me a sandwich. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Get to the next house. She says, would you like something to eat or drink? I said, no, it's all right. This lady, the last house, gave me a jug of cordial and a sandwich. Walked back to the car, came back, there was a jug of cordial and sandwich. And it wasn't that the people weren't kind, polite or whatever. They just wanted to have an identity of, oh, other people do this. I want to do that. And it's the same with reviews. People know that other people are doing it, but you give them a good identity like he does. He goes, amazing customers leave great reviews. Makes sense, does it not? And they go, yeah. And they're like, oh, I want to be that. One of my retail clients will not ask for reviews. He will not send them a message. I work with him, but we have a slightly different way. And he can't believe, he said, you can't get them without asking. I said, well, watch, we're in the store. Client comes in. I think I've told you this before, Terence. And I said, I bet you I can get you a review within the hour. They hadn't had one for about 5 days. And this guy's standing at the counter and he said, oh, thanks for such and such. And I yelled out to one of the other staff members, hey, did you see that amazing review from Terence the other day? And the guy looks at me and goes, yeah. And I said, isn't it amazing? Like, it's always good, no matter how old we are, we still love a good pat on the back about that they love the service level that we bring them, because that's what, like, it makes a real big difference. I really like that. And the person then goes, yeah, I do. It was a really nice message. And the person at the counter is just standing there. They get out in the car and they sit in the car for a while. And next minute, review comes in. We haven't asked them for one, but they want to be associated with that identity. So if you can take that out of pretty much, if you do that with anything that you're seeking, especially with kids, My kids, if I tell one of the kids, you're amazing at cleaning up your room, the other two are in there cleaning up their room. I would like to say that happens, but I mean, in the short version, it's that identity that they're seeking will transform the reaction or the influence you have, rather than the manipulation that, because if they want it and if they identify with that type of person, they're the ones that you want reviews. If they don't even hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Cool. All right. Well, mate, that's really, really good. I'm glad I asked those questions. Thank you for those answers. Perfect, mate. All right. Well, thank you very much, Scott, for bringing us all that really, really, I guess, valuable information. So really, really appreciate your time, mate. And
yeah, thanks.
we'll be talking again very soon, I'm sure.